Today we're digging into something pretty frustrating, actually. It's this gap between having incredible expertise, world-class know-how,
Mhm.
and yet still making these avoidable, sometimes really damaging mistakes.
Yeah, it's a real puzzle. We've looked at sources covering some super high stakes fields, medicine, aviation, finance, even construction. And our goal really is to pull out the key ideas on how to fight what we might call ineptitude, especially now when everything feels so incredibly complex.
We're basically looking for the tools that help smart, capable people avoid, well, messing up unnecessarily.
Exactly. How do we stop dropping the ball?
Okay, let's kick off with a story from medicine that really sets the stage. It's Halloween night in San Francisco. A trauma team gets a stab wound victim, and these folks are top-tier professionals.
Right. They did everything you'd expect. Monitor the patient perfectly, got him prepped for surgery, fluids going, totally by the book.
Totally. But then things start going sideways. The patient's vital signs just plummet. Heart rate shoots up, blood pressure tanks.
And the team's scrambling, right? Running through all the possibilities, massive bleeding somewhere hidden, lungs collapsing. But the monitors, they weren't showing the obvious culprits. It's just this terrifying mystery unfolding under immense pressure.
Yeah, terrifying is the word. It took minutes, critical minutes, where the patient's getting worse before one doctor just sort of hits the pause button on the panic and asks this incredibly basic question they'd all
The
miss.
question being,
What was the weapon?
and it changes everything.
Huh.
Turns out the other person at the party, the assailant, was dressed as a soldier. The weapon was a bayonet.
A bayonet, which
Yeah.
has this unique length and shape.
Exactly. So the damage was deeper, weirder than your typical knife wound.
Yeah.
And as the surgeon said later, your mind just doesn't think of a bayonet in San Francisco. They had all the skill, all the knowledge.
Stupendous know-how, as the source puts it.
Right. Stupendous know-how. But they failed because they missed that one seemingly obvious detail in the heat of the moment.
And that failure, it really nails this core problem that some philosophers, Gorovitz and McIntyre, pointed out about professional failure. They basically broke it down into 3 reasons why we fail.
Okay. What are they?
Well, the first 2 are almost understandable, you could say. First is necessary fallibility. Like, the task is just genuinely beyond human limits, physically or maybe practically impossible.
Right. Sometimes things are just too hard.
And the second is ignorance, where the science just isn't there yet. We literally don't know how to solve the problem because the knowledge doesn't exist.
Okay. Ignorance and necessary limits. But what's the third?
The third one, this is the one that stings. It's ineptitude.
Ineptitude. So that means the knowledge is there.
Exactly. The knowledge exists. It's maybe even common knowledge, taught in training,
Yeah.
but we somehow fail to apply it correctly when it matters. It's not that the puzzle's unsolvable, it's that we dropped the ball. Maybe we were distracted or tired or just overwhelmed.
And being overwhelmed feels like the defining feature of right now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The sheer amount of information, of knowledge, it's exploded.
Absolutely. Think about medicine again. Go back, say, 70 years. Heart attack in the 1950s. What was the treatment? Morphine, bed rest.
And hope for the best, pretty much. Yeah, failure back then was often down to pure ignorance. We just didn't know what else to do.
But today, for that same heart attack, there are, a dozen or more really effective treatments? Statins, clot busters, sophisticated ways to manage blood pressure.
Oh, yeah, the options are incredible now. So the problem's flipped, hasn't it? It's not about lacking knowledge anymore. The challenge is consistently, flawlessly applying all that knowledge we already have. Every single patient, every single time, that's achieving aptitude, as you might call it.
And the sheer scale of information needed for that kind of perfect application. It's just too much for one brain. The World Health Organization lists over 13,000 distinct diseases, syndromes, injuries.
13,000. And you see reports from places like Harvard Vanguard. Their doctors are juggling, on average, like 250 different primary diseases, plus managing maybe 900 other active issues just in their regular office visits each year.
That volume is just staggering, and you see the risk accumulating in places like the ICU, the intensive care unit. The data's pretty stark there.
It really is. The average ICU patient apparently needs something like 178 distinct actions from their care team every single day.
Whoa, okay, 178 actions. But wait, these are highly trained ICU doctors and nurses. They know the procedures inside out. So how are mistakes still happening? Is it really just memory lapses, or is it that sheer cognitive load you mentioned?
It's definitely the cognitive load, compounded by the high-stress environment. Think about it. Even if these experts have an incredibly low error rate, say just 1% on those 178 actions, that still works out to an average of nearly 2 errors per patient every single day.
2 errors a day. Wow. And those could be anything. Skipping a step, miscommunication, dosage mistakes.
Exactly. Small slips, maybe, but the potential for harm is always there. That
Yeah.
risk is just constant in that kind of environment.
And sometimes those small slips have absolutely devastating consequences. Like, there's this story of a patient having stomach cancer surgery. Seems routine, but then his heart just stopped.
Right. Vitals crash, chaos ensues. Everyone's trying to figure out what went wrong.
And it took them a while, but they eventually tracked it down to a procedural breakdown. An anesthesiologist needed to give potassium, which is common, but
But in the rush, they used the wrong concentration. Is that it?
yeah, a concentration 100 times stronger than intended, basically a lethal overdose.
Oh, my God. Given by a trained expert who just grabbed the wrong vial under pressure.
Exactly. Nearly killed the patient because of one single catastrophic slip-up. The knowledge was there, but the system, the moment, it failed.
So the human brain, even a highly trained one, just can't reliably manage all that detail under intense stress.
Okay.
So if modern medicine, with all its science, struggled with this, where did the first really effective solution come from? Where did we figure out how to systematize this?
Well, interestingly, it came from aviation, way back in 1935. The U.S. Army Air Corps was testing this huge, advanced new plane from Boeing, the Model 299. They called it the Flying Fortress.
Right, a real leap in technology for the time.
But during a critical test flight, it stalled just after takeoff, crashed, and killed 2 of the crew.
And the investigation found, what? Mechanical failure.
Nope. Pilot error. The official verdict was basically that the plane was too much airplane for one man to fly, too complex for even an expert pilot to handle just by instinct and memory. The pilot forgot one simple step, unlocking a new control surface lock.
So the complexity overwhelmed the expertise. What do they
Yeah.
do? More training, longer training.
That's the genius part. No, they realized more training wasn't the answer for these already expert pilots. The solution was an index card.
And next class.
Yep, a simple pilot's checklist with steps for taxiing, takeoff, flying, landing. Basic stuff, but critical stuff.
And did it work?
It's like magic. With pilots using that checklist, the Model 299, which became the famous B-17 bomber, went on to fly almost 1.8 million miles without a single accident. The checklist became the safety net for the brain, the cognitive net.
Wow. Okay, but surely not all checklists are created equal, right? You can probably make a bad checklist.
Oh, absolutely. Someone from Boeing, Daniel Borman, talks about this. Bad checklists. They're vague, way too long. They try to spell out every single tiny thing.
And they probably make people complacent, right? Like they just switch their brains off and tick boxes.
Exactly. They turn off the expert's brain. A good checklist, though, is different. It's precise, it's efficient, and it focuses laser-like on the killer items.
Killer items, meaning?
The handful of really critical steps that are most dangerous to miss, the ones even experts sometimes forget under pressure. They're reminders, not exhaustive instruction manuals.
Okay, that makes sense. And there are different ways to use them, different formats.
Yeah, generally 2 main types. First is do confirm.
Do confirm. How does that work?
So imagine you're doing something complex, but maybe not strictly sequential, like diagnosing a tricky illness or maybe building something specialized. You use your skill and judgment to do the tasks.
Drawing on your experience.
Right. Then, at a specific point, you pause. You pull out the checklist and confirm that you've done all the critical items on it. The list backs up your expertise.
I got it. Use your brain first, then check your work.
Yeah.
What's the other type?
The other is redo. This one's more like, well, like assembling IKEA furniture.
Okay, I know that feeling.
Yeah. You read the step on the list, then you immediately do that specific action. Read, tighten screw A, do, tighten screw A, read, insert tab B, do, insert tab B.
So that's for tasks where the sequence is absolutely vital and the main risk is skipping a step altogether.
Precisely. And when this simple checklist idea finally jumped into medicine with Peter Pronovost's central line checklist, I mean, the results were just stunning, especially given how basic the checklist was.
Yeah, that's a honest example. The checklist had, what, 5 steps for putting in an IV central line? Things everyone knew?
Totally standard stuff. Wash your hands, clean the skin with chlorhexidine, use sterile drapes, wear a mask on gloves, put on a sterile dressing. None of this was new information.
And yet, before the checklist, doctors were skipping at least one of those basic steps in more than a third of patients.
More than a third. It's shocking, right? I mean, washing hands. How does just writing it down change things so dramatically? Is it purely the reminder?
It seems to be more about making the discipline official, making it unavoidable. At Johns Hopkins, when they rolled out the checklist, they also did something crucial. They explicitly empowered the nurses to stop the procedure, to speak up, if they saw a doctor skip a step.
Ah, so it wasn't just the list, it was changing the team dynamic too, giving permission to intervene.
Exactly. And that combination, the simple list plus the empowered team, it dropped their central line infection rate from 11% down to essentially zero in the ICU.
Zero from 11%. That's incredible. A huge, costly problem basically eliminated by what one doctor called a stupid little checklist.
And it wasn't just Hopkins. When Michigan rolled it out across their state's ICUs, bloodstream infections plummeted by 66% in 18 months.
Wow. The estimates were, what, $175 million saved and over 1,500 lives.
Yeah, staggering impact from such a simple intervention. But that success story is mostly about tackling a specific high-risk procedure, what you might call a forcing function.
Okay. So it works great for those kinds of defined tasks. But what about the really messy stuff? The true complexity, like that trauma patient example where there are thousands of possible diagnoses.
Right. One study looked at trauma patients and found over 1,200 different diagnoses occurring in more than 30,000 unique combinations. You can't write a simple 5-step checklist for that.
No way. That's where the old model of the single master builder, the one genius who knows everything, just completely breaks down.
Like in modern construction, right? Think about building a skyscraper today. You've got maybe 16 different specialized trades involved: structural engineers, electricians, plumbers, facade experts, HVAC.
Yeah, the list goes on. No single architect or project manager can possibly hold all that specialized knowledge in their head and coordinate it perfectly.
Exactly. So the construction industry figured out they needed checklists, not just for tasks, but crucially for communication. They used two main types.
Okay, what are they?
Well, first there's the construction schedule. That's more like a classic task checklist, making sure steps A, B, and C happen in the right order on time.
Pretty straightforward. Get the foundation poured before you put up the walls.
Right. But the really clever one for managing complexity is their second type, the submittal schedule.
Submittal schedule. Okay, that sounds different. How does it work?
It's essentially a communication checklist.
Hmm.
It forces the different specialists, the structural guys, the electrical team, the interior designers, to formally submit information and plans to each other at specific planned points in the project.
Ah, so it mandates talking?
Yeah.
It forces coordination?
Precisely. It ensures they address potential conflicts or unexpected problems before they become disasters. Like, say, the engineers realize the planned route for the giant air conditioning ducts clashes with where the structural beams need to go. The submittal schedule makes them sit down, share the data, and figure out a solution together.
Okay, that's fascinating. So it prevents those situations where one team does their work perfectly, but it messes things up for another team down the line because they didn't talk.
Exactly. The source material points out that the biggest cause of major errors in big construction projects isn't usually shoddy materials or bad workmanship. It's a failure of communication between the expert teams.
So the checklist becomes a tool to institutionalize teamwork, to force the collective wisdom over individual silos. That makes a lot of sense, especially when things inevitably go off script.
Yeah, and you see this dynamic play out really clearly in crisis situations, too. Think about the response during Hurricane Katrina.
Oh yeah, that was chaotic.
Understatement. The traditional top-down command and control approach largely failed. You had central authorities trying to micromanage everything, refusing to let go of control.
Right, I remember stories of vital information getting stuck, trucks full of water being turned away because they didn't have the right paperwork from headquarters.
Exactly. Central command was overwhelmed and couldn't adapt. But then you had an unlikely success story. Walmart.
Walmart, how did they succeed?
Their CEO basically did the opposite of command and control. He sent out a simple message to all the store managers and employees in the affected areas. A lot of you are going to have to make decisions above your usual level. Just do the right thing.
Huh. So they pushed the decision-making power out to the edges.
They did. They decentralized authority. They trusted the people on the ground who actually knew what was needed locally. And they prioritized coordination among them rather than issuing rigid instructions from afar. It was about enabling local adaptation and cooperation.
Which is kind of what those sophisticated communication checklists achieve in construction, empowering the experts at the sharp end and ensuring they talk to each other.
Precisely. It's about facilitating coordination, not just dictating actions.
Okay, so bringing this all back to the operating room, where the stakes are incredibly high. The World Health Organization decided to try and implement this checklist idea on a global scale, right?
Yeah.
With their safe surgery checklist.
That's right. It was a major initiative. They developed a checklist with 19 items, took about 2 minutes to run through, And it included a mix of simple task checks, like confirming patient identity, but also these crucial communication checks we've been talking about.
Then they tested it rigorously.
Oh, yeah. They rolled it out in 8 hospitals across the world. Very diverse settings, places like Seattle and London, but also much less resourced hospitals in Manila, in Tanzania.
So they could see if it worked regardless of wealth or existing technology levels.
Exactly. And what they found before the checklist was pretty sobering. Across all these different hospitals, rich and poor, the teams were missing basic minimum safety steps in, on average, 2/3 of all surgical patients.
2/3. That's way higher than you'd hope or expect. The system was failing routinely.
It really was. But then they introduced the checklist, and the results.
Well,
The researchers said they far outstripped what we dared to hope for.
what kind of improvement did they see?
Across every single one of those 8 diverse hospitals, major complications after surgery fell by 36%, and deaths from surgery fell by 47%.
47% fewer deaths. Just from using a 2-minute checklist.
47%. It was stunning. And it proved definitively that this wasn't about having more money or fancier equipment. It was about basic discipline and communication, facilitated by the checklist.
That's incredibly powerful data, hard to argue with, and yet, you still hear about resistance, right? Especially from surgeons. Why is that?
Well, there's definitely a cultural hurdle. The operating room has often been seen as, the operating theater with the surgeon as the star performer, the virtuoso.
Right, that master builder mentality again, the belief in the lone genius whose skill should be enough.
Exactly. And that mindset can create resistance to something like a checklist, which feels, well, maybe basic or bureaucratic to some. There was even a study showing that about 1 in 4 surgeons felt that junior members of their team shouldn't really question their decisions during surgery.
Wow, that's not great for teamwork or safety.
Not at all. But the WHO checklist directly tackles that culture. For instance, one of the communication checks is the timeout before the first incision, where every single person in the room has to introduce themselves by name and role.
That sounds simple, almost like just good manners. Does it really make a difference?
Apparently, it makes a huge difference. It's not just a formality. That simple act of pausing, of acknowledging everyone as a named expert with a specific role, it psychologically empowers everyone on the team. It makes it easier for the nurse or the anesthesiologist or the junior resident to speak up if they see something wrong or if a step on the checklist is about to be missed.
Ah, okay. So it flattens the hierarchy just a little bit, makes
Right.
it feel more like a team effort where everyone has a voice, even if it's just for those few minutes.
Precisely. It enforces not just technical discipline, but also crucial teamwork and communication discipline.
That's really insightful. It's not just preventing technical errors, it's actively changing the working culture. And this idea, this discipline of the checklist, it extends beyond these life or death situations too, right? You mentioned finance earlier.
Oh, absolutely. Some really successful value investors like Monish Pabrai explicitly adopted checklists for their investment decisions.
Why? What were they trying to prevent?
They were trying to combat what Pabrai called greed mode, or even cocaine brain, that sort of euphoric, irrational state you can get into when you're anticipating a massive financial windfall. It's pure cognitive bias, a form of ineptitude where excitement overrides rational analysis.
So how does a checklist help with that?
Well, Pabrai looked at mistakes made even by investing legends like Warren Buffett. He found an instance where Buffett invested heavily in a company based on its fantastic earnings during an economic boom.
Okay.
But he apparently failed to check if those earnings were sustainable or if they were just artificially inflated by the boom conditions. In this case, it was the dot-com bubble driving temporary demand for the company's products.
So the underlying business wasn't as strong as the current numbers looked. A classic bubble trap.
Exactly, a cognitive blind spot created by the general market euphoria and the excitement of the deal. So Pabrai added a simple item to his investment checklist. Confirm whether revenues are potentially overstated or understated due to current boom or bust conditions.
Just forcing that moment of skeptical verification. Pause the excitement, check the fundamentals against the cycle.
You're right. It forces disciplined analysis over gut feeling or market hype. And what these investors found was fascinating. Using the checklist led to better investment outcomes, demonstrably better returns.
With no increase in skill, as the source says.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They didn't suddenly become smarter investors. They just systematically mitigated their own very human psychological biases. And interestingly, they also found they became more efficient
More efficient, how?
because the checklist helped them quickly weed out obviously flawed investment ideas early on, so they stopped wasting time and energy chasing deals that were doomed from the start because of some fundamental flaw the checklist caught.
That's a fantastic point. Discipline actually creates efficiency. It's not just about preventing disaster, it's about focusing effort where it counts.
It really is the ultimate proof of concept.
Mm.
Checklists aren't some kind of admission of weakness or lack of skill. There's a smart, practical recognition that the world is complex, our brains are fallible, and we need tools to manage that reality.
So when we think about heroism in this modern, complex age, maybe it looks a bit different than we imagine. We all saw the Miracle on the Hudson, right? Captain Sully Sullenberger landing Flight 1549 on the river. He was instantly hailed as this heroic genius acting purely on instinct.
Yeah, the narrative was all about individual brilliance under pressure. But Sully himself and the co-pilot Jeff Scales consistently pushed back against that. They stressed that the successful outcome was down to years of training, teamwork, and rigorously following procedures, including running checklists.
Even in that extreme emergency, losing both engines right after takeoff, they were running checklists.
Absolutely. They were working through the engine failure checklist procedures right up until the moment of impact. The success was the system working, the training, the teamwork, the procedures embodied by skilled professionals, not just one person's gut feeling.
It really reframes heroism, doesn't it? It's about discipline and teamwork as much as individual skill. I even read that the most basic engine failure checklist for a small single-engine plane starts with an almost absurdly simple first step.
Who is it?
Just fly the airplane.
Huh. That's brilliant. It's like a meta check. Before you do anything else, just remember the absolute priority. Don't get so lost in the emergency procedures that you forget to actually fly.
Exactly. It's the ultimate reminder against cognitive overload. Get back to basics first.
So the crucial takeaway from all of this, for you listening, is really this. In our incredibly complex world, accepting our own fallibility isn't weakness, it's strength. It's realism. Checklists aren't there to replace expertise or judgment or even audacity.
Right. They're there to support it.
Exactly.
Mm.
They buttress our skills by reliably taking care of the critical basic steps, getting the dumb stuff, the known risks, out of the way consistently, so that our expert brains are free to focus on the genuinely difficult, novel problems that require real judgment and creativity.
The evidence just seems overwhelming, really. Across medicine, aviation, construction, finance, these simple tools deliver dramatically better outcomes. They save lives, they save money, they prevent disasters.
They really do.
So if these straightforward, often inexpensive checklists can make such a huge difference in these incredibly high-stakes, high-tech fields, here's the final thought for you to consider. Where in your own most complex area, maybe it's your job, maybe a challenging project, maybe even managing your personal finances, where are you currently relying just on your memory, your habit, or your individual instinct, instead of using some form of disciplined, systematic procedure?
It might just be time to try a checklist.